はい、今回のスピーカーはリン・ツイストです。でリン・ツイストはですね、お金とどうやって幸せな関係を築くのかについて語らせたらまさに世界一のスピーカーです。彼女はこれまで40年以上世界の飢餓貧困をなくすための活動をやってきました。でその中でですね、例えば本当にお金がない状態の人たち、それからものすごくですねお金を持っている世界の大富豪まで、それから、一般の中流階級の人たちまで幅広くですね、それぞれの人たちがお金とどう付き合っているのか、お金に対してどういう信念を持っているのかというのを見てきました。その中でじゃあどうやってお金と幸せな関係について築けばいいのかっていうのをすごく深い洞察を持っているんですね。で今回の動画ではですね、ぜひそのあたりをご覧いただければと思います。それではどうぞ。
Can you bring the house lights up a little bit so I can see who I'm talking to? Can you do that? Great. Hi. I've never spoken to a Wall Street audience before, so I want to see you. As a person who's an activist, a global activist, a fundraiser, a philanthropist, someone who loves to ask for money, I do it all the time. In fact, I have to restrain myself from not asking you for money right now. I've been a philanthropist and a fundraiser all my life for the things that I believe in. And I wrote a book called The Soul of Money. And I wrote that book because when you work on hunger and poverty, when you raise money, when you travel the world, when you sit at the feet of someone like Mother Teresa, you begin to understand that a lot of the problems we face are connected with a distorted, difficult, and untransformed relationship that we have with money. And the book, The Soul of Money, people ask me, does money have soul? Well, no, but we do, and we can give soul to money in the way we earn it, in the way we spend it, in the way we invest it, in the way we save it, and in the way we contribute it. And I've learned my lessons about money, not here on Wall Street. I'm not a financial banker. I didn't really even pass economics that I can remember. But I've learned my lessons about money from people I used to call poor. And when I use that label now, it rankles me because I know them. I've worked with them. I've been side by side with them in the trenches after the 1984-1985 famine in Ethiopia, with women who lost every single child to starvation. And I can't call those people poor. There's nothing poor about them. They have more strength, more resolve, more determination. They're more creative, more innovative than most of us will ever need to be. And they exhibit more courage to live through one day than you and I are going to need to exhibit in an entire lifetime. So to call them poor is to demean them and to demean those of us who would call them that. They're awesome people, and what's poor is their circumstances, not them. They're whole and complete people living in the crushing reality, the oppressive reality of resource-poor circumstances, which sometimes drives people to be as great as those of us in this room would want to be throughout our life. It has them depend on their inner resources, their inner riches, and not look to outer riches. I've also learned a lot of my lessons about money from people that I used to call rich. And I don't call people rich any longer, although some of us may be that here. Certainly in this part of the world, there's a lot of people who we think of as rich. And as a fundraiser, I'm always looking for those people. You know, what's their phone number? What's their email address? But I now realize that calling people rich does the same disservice to people because they start thinking they are their circumstances, when they too are whole and complete people living in the ebb and flow and sometimes numbing reality of excessive resources. And Mother Teresa taught me many, many beautiful things. I could tell 1,000 stories about her. She was the real deal. But one of the things that she taught me was that the vicious cycle of wealth can be as intractable, as oppressive, have as much suffering as the vicious cycle of poverty. You can get caught in it, and you don't know that you're stuck. So I've learned these lessons from Ethiopian women after the famine, people in Mozambique after the war there, people in Bangladesh after a tremendous flood where people will be so resilient they'll rebuild their homes sometimes 20, 30, 40, 50 times. And my most recent lessons have come from the people of the Amazon rainforest where I now work with indigenous people. Indigenous peoples of the Amazon who are intact in their culture, intact in their tradition, and clearly intact in their relationship with the community of life and the natural world. In that part of the world, indigenous people hold the good of the community as the highest ethic. And if you hold the good of the community as the highest ethic, then the individuals will be taken care of. That's the way they see it. So people never individuate at expense of the community. And when someone in that reality or that way of seeing things in indigenous communities takes more than they need, they send them to the shaman. They think they're mentally ill. You would never do that. And I suggest that the community of life is where we need to put our highest priority now. We are living at a time in history where for the first time ever, humanity, one species, is using more resources from the earth than she can regenerate. And we've gone into what's called ecological overshoot or ecological debt. The year that began was 1987. Scientists can put a date on it. It was 1987 that we went over that one Earth line. We now, 25 years later, 26 years later, use 41% more resources than the Earth can regenerate. If you think about that, realize that we're living off an ecological credit card we can never pay back. And I assert to you, standing right here on Wall Street with Wall Street right there at the back and having just rung the bell downstairs with the other speakers, that the financial crisis we've just lived through is not only the result of some greed, yes, some banking practices that weren't too cool, yes, some mortgages that weren't that solid, yes, and a lot of things that it's been attributed to, lack of this regulation or that, but it's actually a reflection of the ecological crisis. That the economy is a subset of the ecology. Eco, they are related. This stage, this screen, my blouse, the microphone that's picking up my voice, all comes from the earth. Everything comes from the earth. And we are now using 41% more resources than the earth can regenerate. We are in deep ecological debt. And the economy, being a subset of the ecology, now is revealing and mirroring that back to us. I assert that borrowing more and more and more money will never get us out of this crisis, the economic crisis. It will assuage us. It will make us feel a little better. It will have things be a little softer when they land. But until we, as a human species, learn how to live within our ecological means, the economic crisis will still haunt us. I want to suggest to each person in this auditorium and anybody who's watching this that the choices you make may influence the future of life for the next 1,000 years. You could think of that as a burden, but I think of it as something quite different than that. We're living at a time where our lives are ennobled by that responsibility. Our lives matter so deeply. The choices we make are so critical that if you think about it, that makes us living lives that could be the most meaningful lives any generation of humankind has ever lived. We have the opportunity to turn the tide from a inhospitable, unsustainable, really dangerous future, which is where we're headed, to a hospitable, nurturing, sustainable future by the choices we make. We have the opportunity to bring forth an environmentally sustainable, spiritually fulfilling, and socially just human presence on this planet. And we can do that in the way that we use money. Rather than using money as an end, use it as a means to serve the planet, serve each other, and be in communion with the community of life. So I invite you, as people here on Wall Street, everybody's looking to Wall Street all the time. Everybody wants to know what's happening on Wall Street. It's kind of where it's at. I invite you to consider the possibility that this, of all places on earth, could be the place where the tide turns. Business is the largest institution on earth. Business has a huge responsibility now, at a time when we're in a kind of crisis that we go numb to because it's so big we don't know what to do about it. But there's solutions for absolutely everything that we face, and we have the opportunity to rise to that occasion. And I invite, in fact, I challenge those of you who are on Wall Street to be as great as the women in Ethiopia after that 1985 famine, to be as great as the people in the rainforest who are fighting the battle for their lives, their future, their forests, and the community of life. I invite you to be as great as you've ever been as we turn the tide and create a future that will work for all of us. Thank you.
はい、今回の動画いかがだったでしょうか。この動画をご覧になっていただいてですね、お金をただ単にたくさん持ってるだけでは幸せになれないということに気づいていただいたと思うんですね。そこが大きな落とし穴なんですね。で、お金を持ちつつかつ幸せである、これを両立するためにはどうすればいいのか、それを皆さん今回の動画で学んだんだと思います。ぜひですね、今回の課題はですね、コメント欄に今回の動画を通じて見てですね、自分が気づいたこと、感じたこと、それをぜひ書いていただければと思います。本日もありがとうございました。また次回お会いしたいと思います。